I didn't mean to touch him. I didn't even know I could pull an alpha to his knees without lifting a finger. But the moment his gaze slammed into mine, deep, sharp, hungry in a way no king should ever look at a girl like me, my body answered him before my mind caught up. Everything inside me tightened, flared, rose like heat under trembling skin, and he felt it. The mega-sized alpha, the one who never loses control, the one everyone swears has no weakness. So why did he look at me like I was the one who could unmake him? Why did his breath shake when my name wasn't even supposed to exist in his world? Tell me, Rainmaker, what would you do if the most powerful alpha alive suddenly reacted to you like you were the one thing he wasn't allowed to want? Welcome back, Rainmakers. If you're new here, settle in. You just stepped into a story that won't let you go. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where are you listening from tonight, and have you subscribed? Because if you think this beginning is intense, you haven't even tasted the storm that's coming. Don't miss a single drop. My name is Elyra, and until that night, I thought I was ordinary. A background girl. A quiet omega with no heat cycle, no power, no reason for anyone to look twice. I lived in the lower district, where even moonlight felt cheap. My future was supposed to be simple. Work, breathe, survive. Nothing more. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. It happened during the moon festival. Loud drums, glowing lanterns, the smell of roasted herbs hanging in the air. I was carrying baskets for my aunt when something inside me shifted. It wasn't heat. Not the way omegas describe it. It was more like a tidal pull under my skin, a silent snap that tugged me forward, stealing my breath. The crowd around me blurred, voices twisted, my heart stuttered, and then the air split. A pressure rolled across the festival square so heavy it knocked half the dancers off rhythm. People gasped and stepped back as warriors in black armor stormed through the crowd, forming a hard line. And behind them, him, Alpha King Kael, a towering wall of strength, scarred, broad, cold as winter steel. A ruler known for never reacting to anyone, not fear, not desire, not temptation. His instincts were said to be locked behind an unbreakable wall. So tell me why, Rainmakers. Why did that unbreakable man stop the moment his eyes found me? Why did his jaw clench like he was fighting something primal? Why did his breathing deepen, slow, heavy, strained, as if the moon itself was dragging him toward the girl with a basket of roots in her shaking hands? I couldn't move. His gaze pinned me. Heat rolled through my spine like a forbidden current, pooling low, sharp, overwhelming. I felt exposed, seen, claimed by a force I didn't understand. And Kael, this alpha, this king, this giant who commands armies. His pupils thinned, his shoulders locked. Instinct shredded through his composure. One step, then another. He came straight for me, every guard tense, unsure why their king suddenly looked like a man starving. People whispered, "Who is she? What did she do? Why is the king reacting to an omega nobody?" But I didn't hear them. All I heard was the pulse in my ears and the whisper of something ancient awakening between us. When he reached me, he didn't speak. He just stared, deep, intense, like he was memorizing the shape of my breath. And then, in a voice so low it shook through my ribs, he murmured, "What are you?" Not who. What? Because he felt something he shouldn't, and I felt something I couldn't explain. Before I could answer, my knees buckled as another surge of silent heat shot through me, stealing my breath. Kael's hand shot forward, catching my arm with a grip that was too careful for a king who feared nothing. His touch sparked something wild, a forbidden bond clawing open. The world tilted, my vision blurred, and Kael's eyes widened like he'd just witnessed the one thing every alpha is taught to avoid: a bond forming where no bond should exist. Rainmakers. My life ended in that moment, and something far more dangerous began. He didn't give me time to breathe. Kael's grip tightened, firm but trembling, as he pulled me through the stunned festival crowd. Warriors scrambled after him, confused, whispering as if they'd just watched their king lose a fight with his own instincts. My head spun. Every step closer to him made the air thicker, hotter, charged with something I couldn't name. The world faded in sharp flashes, stone corridors, torchlight, the echo of his boots, until he shoved open a heavy door and dragged me inside. The chamber slammed shut behind us. He didn't speak. He didn't sit. He didn't even look away. He just paced, a giant of a man torn between claiming and resisting something burning straight through him. Rainmakers. It was the first time I realized the truth. The Alpha King was shaking, not visibly, not the way ordinary men tremble, but the subtle kind, the kind you feel rather than see, the kind that says a wall is cracking from the inside. I pressed my back to the cold stone wall, heart thudding. His attention snapped to me like a predator scenting a live wire. "Stay there," he warned, voice low and strained, as if I could move, as if my legs would obey anything but the pull tying us together. Kael dragged a hand across his jaw. His breathing deepened, heavy enough to fog the air. He tried to speak, stopped, cursed under his breath, harsh, frustrated, completely unlike the controlled king the world adored. "What's happening to me?" he muttered, more to himself than to me. He took one step closer, and the bond yanked at both of us so violently that I gasped. His eyes darkened. Another step. The heat surged. My pulse jumped. He reached me before either of us could rethink it. His palm braced the wall beside my head, caging me in without touching me. His scent hit me like a storm. My knees softened. His breath stuttered against my cheek. "Why do you pull at me like this?" he whispered, a question he hated needing to ask. Rainmakers. Imagine an alpha known for absolute control leaning in like a man starving for air. He could only breathe through you. "Speak," he demanded, but the order cracked in the middle, ruined by something raw. I don't know what I'm doing," I whispered back. His eyes snapped shut as if that made it worse, not better. When he opened them, the mask was gone. No king, no warrior, just a man standing on the edge of losing himself. The door burst open. Council members rushed in, pale and frantic. "Your Majesty, step away from the Omega. She's triggering an instant collapse." Kael turned on them with a voice that shook the room. "Out." They froze. Rainmakers. Even they heard it. Not authority. Instinct. A dangerous, vibrating edge that warned anyone who interfered would regret it. But before they could react, a sharp wave tore through him. A full-body shudder that bent him forward for a second. His hand slammed the wall beside me to keep himself upright. His control was slipping. Fast. The council panicked. "Your Majesty, we must separate you, now." Kael didn't answer. He couldn't. He looked at me exactly the way he wasn't supposed to, like he'd finally found the one thing reckless enough to ruin him. "Elyra," he breathed. Hearing my name from his lips did something dangerous to the air between us. A pull. A spark. A promise neither of us could take back. Rainmakers. That was the moment I realized this wasn't an alpha reacting. This was an alpha unraveling, And I was the reason why. The council didn't ask Kael's permission. They threw a suppression net over me the moment the warriors forced him out of the chamber. 10 men holding him back, while priests dragged me to the sanctum for evaluation. Kael fought them like a storm breaking its cage. I felt every surge of his anger, like a pulse under my skin, pounding, echoing, pulling. But they separated us anyway. The sanctum was cold, too bright, too silent. They strapped me to a stone altar, not cruelly, but fearfully, as if touching me too directly might trigger something catastrophic. And maybe they were right. The priests circled me, chanting, palms hovering inches from my body. Symbols glowed, incense burned. Runes lit the entire chamber with a pale, eerie light. Then the head priest leaned in, eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "This pattern hasn't existed since the Moon Rebellion." His assistants recoiled. I felt the fear ripple through them before I heard the words. "She's not a standard Omega. She's a power-borne. The last bloodline. The one meant to rule Alphas, not serve them." Rainmakers? My heart nearly stopped at that. Me? Rule an Alpha? I couldn't even speak without shaking. They kept running tests, energy readings, aura flares, genetic marks, each result worse than the last. Every time fear crossed their faces, the bond inside me tugged harder, as if Kael felt it from wherever they were holding him. One priest stepped back so fast he tripped. "She destabilizes him just by existing," he stuttered. "If the king comes near her again, his instincts may collapse entirely." Another hissed, "She must be contained before—" The doors slammed open. Kael didn't walk in. He stormed in. No crown, no guards, no hesitation. Just raw fury and a bond pulling him straight to me. The warriors tried to block him. They failed. He shoved past them, eyes locked on me, chest rising sharply as he took in the sight of the straps, the altar, the fear on my face. His expression darkened into something lethal. "What have you done to her?" The priests fell silent. No one dared answer. He reached me in 3 strides, his presence slamming into the room like heat-breaking ice. His hand hovered over my wrist, not touching, but close enough that the bond snapped tight, yanking a soft breath out of both of us. Rainmakers. That moment felt like a promise wrapped in danger. One priest tried to speak. "Your Majesty, she must be isolated. Her kind was forbidden for a reason." Kael cut him off with a tone that froze the air. "She is under my protection." The entire sanctum stiffened. His protection wasn't a gentle declaration. It was a claim, a warning, a line drawn in the bones of the kingdom. The head priest swallowed hard. "She will undo you. Her presence is destabilizing your instinct barrier." Kael leaned closer to me, voice low enough that only I heard it. "Let it." My breath caught. His gaze dropped to the straps, and without waiting for permission, he tore them off, one violent, decisive pull after another until I was free. The priests panicked. "You cannot take her. She is dangerous. She could break you." Kael lifted his head slowly, eyes cutting through the room with cold fire. "Then she will break me on my terms." Rainmakers. He didn't look afraid. He didn't look hesitant. He looked like a man who had already chosen which ruin he belonged to. And that ruin was me. Kael didn't take me far. Just outside the sanctum, down a silent corridor where moonlight spilled through narrow windows. Warriors lingered at a distance, unsure whether to approach or flee. He stopped walking, but didn't turn to face me. Just stood there, jaw tight, shoulders rigid, fighting something pulling at him from somewhere deeper than instinct. "Stay behind me," he said. But the bond had other plans. Rainmakers. There is a difference between choosing distance and trying to breathe against a pull that wants to devour both of you. The space between us vibrated, a low hum crawling across my skin, tugging at my spine, urging me closer. I tried to resist. I really did. But every time he inhaled, the air around us shifted, drawing me into the gravity he was desperately trying to escape. He finally turned. Bad idea. His eyes landed on me, and his entire composure fractured. Not visibly, but the kind of break you feel before you see. A subtle rise in his chest, a twitch in his fingers, a flicker in his gaze that said he was one touch away from losing the fight he'd been winning for years. "We need distance," he murmured, stepping back. The bond snapped tight. I stepped forward without meaning to. His brows pulled together, breath catching, the tiniest stutter, the kind you only hear when a man is fighting himself more than he's fighting you. "Elyra, don't!" He warned me like I was the edge he shouldn't stand on, but he never moved far enough to be safe. I tried to hold still, but the pull surged again, sharp, hot, relentless. My hand brushed his forearm. Just a brush, barely a touch, and Kael shattered. The bond slammed through us both like a shockwave. He exhaled, hard, bent his head forward. One hand braced the wall. The other clenched beside me as a low, broken sound escaped him, raw, instinctive, dragged from the deepest part of him. Rainmakers. The king almost dropped to his knees. His control spiraled, rolling off him in waves that filled the corridor with heat. A slow, devastating heat that pressed against me like invisible hands mapping every inch of the space between us. "Don't!" He tried again, but his voice was ruined. My energy surged in response, sliding over him like wildfire, wrapping his frame in a glow he tried to shrug off but couldn't. His breathing thickened. His head lowered until his forehead nearly touched mine. This man, this unbreakable alpha, trembled. "Elyra," he whispered, voice scraped thin. "Step back before I—" But he didn't finish. Couldn't. Because my energy pulsed again, sending another wave through him. His hand shot out, grabbing the wall beside my head, trapping me without touching me. His body boxed me in, heat radiating so fiercely I felt it melt the corners of my restraint. Rainmakers. If he inched even a breath closer, the bond would seal itself. His lips ghosted near my cheek. Not touching, but close enough that the air trembled with the force of everything he was holding back. "We can't," he breathed. "We shouldn't," I whispered. But neither of us moved. The world narrowed to two things: his breath against my skin, and the forbidden pull dragging us straight toward ruin. Kael's voice dropped to a low, unraveling rasp. "One more second, Elyra, and I won't stop." That warning should have scared me. Instead, my pulse begged him to fail. His forehead finally lowered until it rested lightly against mine. A single point of contact that felt more intimate than any touch I'd ever known. Raw, breathless, forbidden. And then he tore himself away, not gently. He ripped himself from the pull like a man breaking out of chains, stumbling back with a growl of frustration and agony. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady the storm inside me. Kael stared at me like he'd just survived drowning in something he didn't want to be saved from. "We stop now," he said, voice rough. "Because if we don't, every law that keeps this kingdom standing will break tonight." Rainmakers. He walked away, but the bond didn't loosen. It tightened. Kael didn't sleep that night. The bond wouldn't let him. I felt it before sunrise, a hot pressure pressing into my ribs, pulsing with sharp edges of emotion that didn't belong to me. Hunger, frustration, possessiveness so heavy it made my knees weak. Every time his restraint slipped, it leaked straight into my chest. Rainmakers. Feeling an alpha's emotions from another wing of the palace is one thing. Feeling them aimed at you is something else entirely. I barely had time to breathe before warriors arrived to escort me to the council chamber, the place everyone swore Kael never lost composure. But today, the moment I stepped inside, I understood. Something in him had cracked. He stood at the head of the long stone table, hands braced, head lowered slightly as council members shouted over each other about containment and risk assessment. Their words hit him like sparks on dry powder. One man spoke too loudly. "The Omega must be isolated," Kael snapped. His voice hit the chamber like a blade. "Finish that sentence and I'll remove your tongue." Silence, heavy, terrified. Every eye turned to me. Kael didn't sit, didn't blink, didn't hide the way his instincts prowled beneath his skin, pacing like something caged and furious. The council whispered among themselves. "He's unstable. She's affecting him. We must intervene." A fresh surge of Kael's irritation slammed into me so sharply that I gasped. His gaze lifted instantly, locking onto me across the room, fierce, possessive, questioning who dared make me react. Rainmakers. He felt everything I felt. That's when jealousy hit, not mine. His, sharp, hot, instant, because someone else had entered the chamber. A young Omega, beautiful, decorated, trained since childhood to serve alphas in political unions. She dared to step forward with a soft smile, bowing low before him. "My king," she murmured, "allow me to ease your—" Kael didn't even look at her. His attention stayed glued to me, his voice low and edged. "Leave." She blinked, startled. "My lord, I only wish—" "I said leave." His tone sent a tremor through the room, but she, foolish, ambitious, took this as a challenge. She moved closer to him. Too close. Rainmakers, the jealousy that slammed into my chest wasn't mine. It was his, sharp and immediate, flooding through our connection so intensely that my breath stuttered. My fingers burned. My vision flashed. Something inside me, that power the priests feared, surged without warning. The girl stepped closer to Kael, and I didn't touch her. I didn't speak. I didn't move. But she flew. A sharp crack split the chamber as her body launched backward, crashing into the opposite wall so hard the tapestry shook. Gasps erupted everywhere. The girl slid to the floor, dazed and terrified. Warriors drew weapons. Priests whispered prayers. Council members recoiled as if I'd turned into a creature they had no name for. Kael moved before anyone else could. He stepped in front of me, a living shield, his entire frame vibrating with possessive instinct. "Touch her," he warned the room, "and I'll end you." The words weren't shouted, they were cold. Final. No one dared challenge him. But the room wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at me. The Omega, who had just thrown a trained royal across a hall without a single fingertip raised. They whispered one word. Power-borne. And panic spread like wildfire. Kael's hand reached back, brushing the air near mine, not daring to touch but staying close enough that I felt the heat of him steadying my pulse. "Elyra," he murmured, voice low enough for me alone. "You just exposed everything they fear." He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. He sounded almost satisfied. Rainmakers. The Alpha wasn't falling anymore. He was choosing the descent. They waited until Kael left the council chamber. Cowards always wait until the threat steps outside. I felt the shift through the bond first, a jolt of anger that wasn't mine, followed by a flash of dread that slammed into my chest so hard I staggered. Kael sensed something wrong. I didn't know what until soldiers burst into my room, weapons raised. "The decree is signed," one muttered. "The Omega is to be executed before dawn." Rainmakers. I didn't even get to scream. Kael did. The doors blew open like they'd been punched by a storm. He entered with no crown, no armor, just raw fury carved into every line of his body. Soldiers flew back before he even reached me. He held a crumpled parchment in his fist, the execution order. He tore it apart right there, strips falling like dead leaves. "Anyone who touches her," he growled, "won't see morning." No argument, no hesitation. He grabbed my wrist, firm, urgent, and pulled me out of the palace before alarms even rang. The bond flared from both sides. Hot and fast, fueled by adrenaline and a need that dragged at every heartbeat. We ran, through the outer gates, down stone steps, into the forest lit only by moonlight. Warriors shouted in the distance. Horns sounded. The entire kingdom was waking to hunt us. Kael didn't slow. He moved like the world was trying to steal something that belonged to him, and he wasn't about to let it happen. "Don't let go," he said, voice rough from running, as if letting go was even possible. Branches whipped past. Leaves slapped against my legs. The wind tore through my hair. Every thud of our feet synced with the pounding heat between us, rising, merging, twisting tighter. Rainmakers, I felt everything he felt. His fear for me, his hunger, his refusal to lose me, his rage at their decree, his need, sharp enough to cut. The bond throbbed like a second pulse in my neck. After what felt like hours, Kael skidded to a stop outside a collapsed temple, a forgotten moon shrine half-eaten by vines and time. "This way," he murmured, guiding me inside. It was dark, dusty, cold, but the moment he shut the stone door, the real danger wasn't outside anymore. It was between us. We stood in the silence, trying to catch our breath. Trying, and failing, to ignore how close we were. How hot the air had become. How the bond pulsed now that nothing stood between our instincts. His chest rose and fell in sharp, controlled bursts. My pulse fluttered beneath my skin. He tried to step back. The bond snapped him forward again. "Elyra," he warned, voice wrecked. It didn't matter. One glance, that's all it took. His restraint cracked. He braced a hand against the wall near my head, breath brushing my cheek, hot, uneven, unsteady. The heat between us coiled slow and deliberate, sliding up my spine like it knew exactly where to settle. Rainmakers. Every inch of space between us vibrated with slow-burning danger. "We can't," he whispered. "But you're not moving," I replied softly. His jaw clenched. His eyes dropped to my mouth for a split second. 1 second too long. The bond surged. He inhaled sharply, fists trembling against the wall. Outside, warriors shouted, torches sweeping through trees. Inside, it was too dark, too still, too hot. Kael leaned closer, not touching, but close enough that the heat rolled off him like a warning disguised as a promise. "This shrine isn't safe," he said. "Then why aren't we leaving?" He exhaled, low, helpless, dangerously close to surrendering, because running from soldiers was easy. Running from this? Impossible. His voice dropped to a whisper that slid right down my spine. "If I lose control in here, I won't pull back this time." The bond throbbed. My breath hitched. His gaze darkened with something he'd been holding back since the festival. "One more second. Just one." He jerked away, violently, as if saving both of us from the edge. Rainmakers. He didn't walk to the other side of the shrine. He fled there. But the bond didn't loosen. It tightened with slow, torturous heat that promised the night wasn't done with us yet. The shrine swallowed every sound from outside. But inside the air pulsed like something alive. Kael stood at the far wall, fists clenched, shoulders tight, chest rising in hard, controlled breaths. He looked like a man holding back a tidal wave with his bare hands. The moonlight slipped in through a broken crack in the ceiling and cut across him, tracing the lines of a king fighting a war inside his own instinct. Rainmakers. I could feel the storm inside him, and he could feel mine. He dragged a hand through his hair, voice hoarse. "Stay, over there." The bond disagreed. It coiled around him, around me, around the shrinking space, drawing him back toward the one thing he swore he wouldn't touch. Heat rolled off him in slow, devastating waves. My own power answered, lifting from beneath my skin like silk unspooling, sliding through the air, reaching for him without my permission. He felt it. His breath stuttered, the tiniest break in control. He looked up sharply. "Elyra, don't do that." "I'm not doing anything." He let out a rough sound, low and torn. "Exactly." He took one step back as if distance could save him. The bond pulled him 2 steps forward. His eyes darkened. He wasn't just fighting instinct. He was losing. Slow, inevitable, beautifully brutal. He pressed his back to the wall like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His chest rose, fell, rose again, slower this time, like he felt something sliding under his ribs and had no idea how to stop it. My power reached for him again, soft at first, then stronger. A teasing curl of heat wrapping around his frame. He inhaled sharply, head tipping back, exposing the tension in his throat. "Elyra," he warned, voice breaking on the edges. "Stop." But the word didn't land, because even as he said it, he leaned toward me. Rainmakers. That was the moment I knew he was done for. The silk thread pull tightened. He dropped to one knee. Not willingly, not ceremonially. His body simply bowed under the weight of a bond he couldn't cage anymore. His hand hit the stone floor, breath ripping out of him. He wasn't weak. He was overwhelmed, overtaken, overrun. "Get away from me," he said through clenched teeth. I should have. I didn't. I stepped closer. One small movement that shattered the last inch of space holding us apart. The air cracked. His head snapped up. His gaze locked on mine with a hunger that stole every thought from my mind. In 2 strides, he had me pinned against the wall. Not with force, but with heat. His hands braced the stone beside my head, trapping me in a cage of instinct and breath, and something raw enough to make my pulse flutter wildly. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. I couldn't. We both knew it. His forehead dipped to mine. Heat washed over me. My power wrapped around him, sliding across his body in waves he couldn't escape. His hand trembled against the wall. He leaned closer, closer, until his breath touched my lips. The first touch wasn't skin. It was the space between us catching fire. He cupped the back of my neck, careful, desperate, pulling me into a kiss that wasn't gentle or slow. It was hunger. It was surrender. It was every moment we'd been denying. Rainmakers. The shrine shook. His mouth moved against mine with a reckless, starving rhythm, as though the world had narrowed to my breath alone. His hands roamed with heat that left trails of tremors under my skin. I felt him everywhere. His restraint crumbling, his instincts taking him apart piece by piece. I arched toward him. He groaned against my lips, low, deep, broken. He lifted me with ease, my back hitting the wall as he pressed closer, heat pouring through every point where our bodies touched. His hands were urgent, gripping, exploring, claiming. My power answered, wrapping around him like a second pair of hands, pulling him deeper, closer, harder. He broke the kiss only to breathe against my neck, ragged, trembling. "Elyra! Gods! If I go further—" His voice cracked. His forehead dropped to my shoulder. His entire body shuddered against mine. "I can feel the moon's edge," he rasped. "It's splintering." That stopped him. Not desire, not instinct. Fear, not for himself, for me. He forced himself back, chest heaving, hands gripping mine like he needed the anchor, but feared the spark. "We stop." He said it like a man dragging himself out of fire. But he didn't let go of my hands. The bond throbbed between us, hot and hungry, furious at being denied. He rested his forehead against mine, breathing hard. "One more moment," he whispered, voice barely holding. And I wouldn't have stopped. Rainmakers. They didn't catch us that night, but Kael learned something far more dangerous. If the moon's edge cracked again, there would be no stopping at all. I woke to silence, and Kael staring at me like he'd survived a nightmare. Not fear of me, fear for himself. His back was against the shrine wall, hands braced on his knees, chest rising in slow, deliberate breaths. The kind you take when you're trying to convince your body it's still yours. "Did I hurt you?" he asked softly, not looking away. "No." His jaw tightened. "That's what terrifies me." The bond pulsed, a slow, heavy throb that carried pieces of him straight into my veins. Worry, desire, guilt, longing so sharp it made my breath catch. He looked away as if my reaction made everything worse. Rainmakers. He wasn't afraid of losing control. He was afraid of how easy it was to lose it with me. Before I could speak, his head snapped up. Footsteps, distant, fast. He was on his feet instantly, instinct snapping into place like armor. "They've made their move." "What move?" He didn't answer with words. He tossed a small parchment to me, something he must have taken off a fallen scout during the night. The seal was broken. The message was short. "The council declares King Kael unfit for rule. Lord Varos will assume the throne at dawn." My stomach dropped. "They replaced you?" I whispered. Kael laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "For wanting what was never theirs to control." He paced the shrine, muscles coiled, eyes sharp. "The new Alpha will send hunters. They'll want you alive, me dead." The bond thrummed at the idea of losing him, hard, painful. He felt it. His gaze flicked to me, softer for a moment. "I'm not letting them near you." Before I could step to him, something tugged my attention. A faint glow coming from the far wall of the shrine. A carved stone tablet, half buried in dust. Words shimmered across it. My pulse jumped. "Kael, look." He joined me, posture tense, eyes scanning the symbols. We read them together as the translation formed in my mind like a whisper. "When the last power-borne Omega awakens, the Alpha destined for her will rise or fall by her touch. Her bond will either crown him or end him." Heat prickled down my spine. Kael didn't move, didn't breathe. He muttered, "So it's true." "What is?" "That your bloodline was lost for a reason." His voice had a rare edge, not anger, but acceptance of something irreversible. "You weren't born to follow an Alpha, Elyra. You were born to change him." "And if I change you the wrong way?" He stepped closer, too close, until his shadow swallowed mine. "Then I fall," he murmured, and I fall knowing exactly who I fell for. Rainmakers. My knees almost buckled at that, but the moment cracked when Kael stiffened, head snapping toward the entrance. "They're here." A hunter squad. Fast. Silent. Closing in. Kael grabbed my hand, not controlled this time. Instinctual. Possessive. Desperate. "Stay behind me," he breathed. Not a command. A plea. The bond pulsed. Heat flickered. Power rose beneath my skin like something stirring awake, ready to break the world for him if I asked it to. Kael tightened his grip. "This is the price," he said quietly, "for wanting you." Outside, steel clashed, branches snapped, voices closed in. Inside, the air thickened with the truth neither of us could deny anymore. We weren't running to survive. We were running because losing each other would destroy us both. Kael didn't sense the betrayal until it was already too late. We slipped through the forest, his hand locked around mine, hunters closing from every direction. But there was another presence, a familiar heartbeat hidden among the attackers. Kael froze. "No," he whispered. A figure stepped from the shadows, one of his own generals, a man he'd trusted since childhood. Rainmakers. The look on Kael's face wasn't anger. It was disbelief sharpened into something lethal. "You led them," Kael said, voice low and dangerous. The general didn't deny it. "She's too powerful, my king," the priest said. Whatever excuse he had died behind Kael's clenched jaw. He moved to shield me, but an arrow hissed from the dark and struck the ground beside us, exploding in a burst of light. A net of energy wrapped around me before I could scream. Kael lunged, instinct ripping through him, but 5 hunters tackled him at once, using chains carved with moon-binding runes. They dragged him back, his roar tearing through the trees, raw enough to rattle the ground. "Elyra!" His voice cracked as the net tightened. My vision blurred. The bond pulsed violently, screaming, pulling, clawing. Then everything went black. I woke on cold stone. The ritual chamber. Torches hissed. Priests circled me with hollow eyes. Chains glowed around my wrists, humming with ancient power meant to sever bonds. The method reserved for omegas who were too dangerous to exist. One priest placed a hand over my chest. "If we break the connection quickly," he murmured, "she might survive." "Might," another echoed. The head priest lifted a blade carved from moon crystal. "For the kingdom." They began chanting. The chains tightened. The bond screamed. Pain lanced through my ribs like something ripping me apart from the inside. Kael felt it. I knew he did. His fear slammed into me through the bond. Sharp, furious, helpless. "Elyra, don't break. I'm coming." His voice faded as the ritual magic drowned everything else. The priests chanted louder. The blade glowed. My breath shattered. Rainmakers. I thought this was the end. Then something inside me snapped. Not gently, not slowly. It erupted. A surge of power exploded outward, throwing every priest off their feet. Chains shattered. Symbols burned white-hot. The chamber shook. Dust rained down. And above us, the moon itself split open in a crack of blinding light. Ancient energy poured through the break, pouring into me, swallowing the ritual, devouring their control. The priests screamed. Some fled, some knelt, weeping. I couldn't breathe, couldn't stand. My vision blurred in waves of silver and heat until a shadow burst into the room. Kael, chains still hanging from his wrists, blood on his knuckles, eyes wild with fear. He reached me just as my legs gave out. His arms closed around me, shaking, desperate, possessive. "I've got you," he whispered, voice breaking. The moon's light flared one last time and then collapsed into darkness. I fell against him. Rainmakers. I didn't know if I'd fainted or if the bond had pulled me somewhere else entirely. I didn't fully wake. I just felt him. Kael's arms around me, tight, shaking, protective to the point of breaking. His breath harsh against my hair. His heartbeat hammering like a war drum under my cheek. He carried me through collapsing tunnels, stepping over fallen priests, tearing through doors with strength that wasn't entirely his anymore. The ritual hadn't just weakened me. It had unchained him. Rainmakers. I could feel his restraint cracking with every step. He reached a hidden passage and kicked it open, slipping inside before hunters flooded the chamber behind us. The moment the door slammed shut, the bond surged so violently it stole the air from my lungs. My body curled closer to him without thinking. His grip tightened. A growl tore from his chest, low, rough, feral. "Elyra, don't move like that," he breathed, voice shaking in a way that made my pulse jump. But my weakened state only drew his instincts harder. He could feel every tremor in me, every rise of breath, every thread of heat left from the moon's rupture. His control didn't just slip, it fell away completely. He pressed me against the cavern wall, not with force, with need. His forehead dropped to mine. His breath collided with my lips. His hands braced on either side of me, caging me in raw, desperate energy. "Look at me," he whispered. I did, and whatever was left of the king vanished. His eyes burned with something primal, a hunger stretched too tight for too long, a bond screaming for release, a man who'd almost lost me and refused to risk that pain again. "Elyra, I can't hold back." He wasn't asking for permission. He was confessing a truth. My fingers curled into his shirt. His breath hitched. The bond struck again, a sharp, overwhelming surge that dragged a gasp out of both of us. It crawled up my spine, wrapped around my ribs, and pulled him into me until our bodies aligned perfectly, instinct answering instinct. He kissed me like he needed it to breathe. Not gentle, not patient, starving. Heat roared through every point of contact. His hands gripped my waist, sliding me closer, anchoring me to his shaking frame. My legs wrapped around him before I realized I'd moved. His mouth trailed down my throat, leaving fire in every place his lips touched. Rainmakers. I felt him unravel in real time. His restraint tore, his control burned away. Every ounce of power he'd kept locked for years surged outward, meeting my own in a collision that shook the cavern walls. He lifted me, effortlessly, urgently, and pressed me deeper against the stone, hips aligning with mine in a way that made the bond throb violently. A soft sound escaped me. His grip tightened. "You can't make noises like that," he rasped, breath unsteady. "Not when I'm already this close to losing myself." But I couldn't stop, and he didn't want me to. His mouth crashed back to mine, hungry, claiming, frantic. The heat built fast, spiraling, climbing with no space for doubt or hesitation. His hands roamed my body with a desperate reverence that made my skin ignite. Every touch said, "I almost lost you. Never again." The bond surged one final time, a blinding wave of energy that tore through both of us, pulling us into a euphoric rush so intense it left my vision flickering white. He buried his face in my neck, groaning my name, holding me so tight I felt the tremor in his bones. The world shook. The cavern rumbled. The moon's edge cracked completely. When his breath finally slowed, he didn't pull away. He stayed pressed against me, arms locked around my waist, forehead resting on my shoulder, chest rising and falling in uneven waves. He whispered into my skin, voice raw, shaken, irrevocably changed. I crossed it, the edge. There's no going back now. Rainmakers. The king wasn't just broken. He was mine. When the bond finally eased, Kael didn't let me go. He held me like he was anchoring himself to the world, and maybe he was. Because the moment he stepped back, the air around him changed. It thickened, hummed, vibrated with a new, dangerous energy that didn't belong to any alpha I had ever heard of. His eyes glowed faintly. His veins pulsed with silver light beneath the skin. The ground trembled under his feet as if recognizing something ancient. Rainmakers. Kael wasn't just stronger. He was becoming something else. He looked at his hands, flexing them slowly, as if he felt the change tearing through his body in waves. "This is because of the bond," he murmured. His voice was deeper, rougher, a resonance that carried power like a second heartbeat. "It didn't just complete," he said. "It transformed me." I stepped closer. His aura wrapped around me instantly, warm, consuming, protective in a way that made my breath catch. The bond pulsed between us, stronger than ever, syncing our hearts to the same rhythm. "You're stabilizing it," he whispered, staring at me with something close to awe. "Without you, this would tear me apart." Before I could respond, the cavern entrance exploded inward. Torches, warriors, council members, priests, all armed, all terrified. They didn't see a king, they saw a threat. "Kael is no longer fit to rule," a councilman shouted. "He is corrupted by the forbidden Omega. Kill them both before the transformation spreads." Kael stepped forward. His energy flared in a violent pulse that sent several warriors stumbling back. But there were too many. They surrounded us with chains and moonblades glowing bright enough to scorch the air. Kael growled, pure instinct, and took a battle stance that made every soldier hesitate. Yet even he knew it wasn't enough. Not against the entire ruling force of the kingdom. And when one priest raised a blade toward me, something inside me snapped. I stepped forward before Kael could move. Rainmakers. My vision bled silver. The moonlight that filtered through cracks in the cavern twisted toward me, bending, coiling, swirling as if answering a call I had never spoken. The priests froze. "Impossible! She's awakening! That form, it shouldn't exist!" But it did. Power surged from my body like light compressed into heat, a wave that rolled across the cavern, bending metal, cracking stone, forcing every warrior to their knees. Kael stared at me in stunned silence, eyes wide, chest heaving. I didn't feel fear. I felt right. As though I'd stepped directly into a destiny that had been waiting for centuries. Moonlight spiraled around me, wrapping my body in shimmering threads that pulsed with power. Not delicate, not soft, commanding. The opposing warriors tried to rise. They couldn't. Their blades shook in their hands. Some dropped weapons entirely. Kael stepped beside me, but not in front. For the first time, he didn't need to shield me. I was the shield. A council elder shouted, voice breaking. "She's the prophecy, the Omega who will overturn the throne." I lifted my hand. Moonlight bent with it, and the entire chamber bowed beneath the force of my awakening. Kael looked at me not with fear, but with absolute, unshakable devotion. "Elyra," he whispered, "you were never made to follow me." He reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers as the moonlight wrapped around us both. "You were made to reign with me." Rainmakers. The kingdom wasn't ready for what we were becoming, but we were. The cavern didn't just shake, it split. Moonlight poured through the cracks in hot, spiraling waves, pulled toward the bond glowing between us. Kael's power surged first, violent, molten, unrestrained, and mine wrapped around it like a second pulse, guiding it, shaping it, amplifying it far beyond what any alpha should be able to survive. Rainmakers. The moment our powers fused, the blood moon law didn't just weaken, it died. A shockwave roared outward across the entire kingdom, across mountains, forests, temples, every alpha dropping to their knees as instinct walls shattered. Omegas gasped as invisible chains snapped. Betas felt their senses shift as the hierarchy rewrote itself. For the first time in history, no one belonged to the moon. The moon belonged to us. Kael pulled me close as the energy settled, his forehead pressed to mine, his breath heavy but steady, not from exhaustion, but from realizing what we had done. "It's over," he murmured. "No," I whispered back. "It's beginning." He smiled, slow, reverent, ruined in the way only devotion can ruin a man. "Then let them witness it." We walked out of the cavern hand in hand. Hunter squads who had been preparing to kill us staggered backward the moment they saw us. Not from fear, not from threat, from recognition. The new order wasn't a prophecy anymore. It was standing in front of them. Kael didn't roar commands. He didn't need to. His aura alone bent the air into obedience, enhanced, stabilized, magnified by the bond that thrummed between us like a heartbeat shared. I felt the shift in them, not loyalty, not instinct, something deeper, acceptance. The palace gates opened at our approach. Council members who once wanted my death dropped to their knees. Priests lowered their heads, moonblades abandoned at their feet. Kael didn't walk ahead of me. He didn't pull me behind him. He stood at my side, fingers brushing mine, a silent vow in every inch of space between us. I stepped forward first. The girl who once shook carrying a basket through a festival no longer existed. The Omega who stood before them was carved by power, tempered by bond, illuminated by moonlight that now bent to her will. Kael's voice rumbled behind me, low, reverent, a king who knew exactly what the world was seeing. "Your Omega, your ruler, your moonborn." The crowd bowed, to us, to what we had become. Later, when the palace emptied and quiet settled around the throne hall, Kael approached me, slow, deliberate, heat rolling off him in waves that made every nerve in my body tighten. He braced one hand beside me on the marble pillar, lowering his head until his breath brushed my lips. "You realize," he murmured, voice dark with promise, "that I kneel for no one." I traced a hand down his chest, the same chest that had nearly shattered under instinct days ago. "And yet," I whispered, "you kneel for me." His eyes flashed with hunger and surrender braided into one. "Willingly," he breathed, "always willingly." His forehead pressed to mine. The bond pulsed hot, deep, hungry in a way that promised the night would not end with words. The kingdom had a new era. We had each other, and the throne was only the first thing we were going to claim together. Rainmakers. This isn't the end. This is the first night of a world rewritten by an Omega who rose and an Alpha who followed her to the edge and beyond.